Hi, welcome to Producer's Circle. I'm your host, Gabe Castro, and on today's episode, we're talking about distribution and promotion of your show. I am joined by two amazing producers here at PCAM to talk about their experiences and give you guys some advice. So, Cindy Burstein and Nick Cassaway.
Hello.
Thank you for joining me.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
I invited you guys because you're super skilled. I've seen the things that you've done, and I'm very impressed. So hopefully we can spread that knowledge and inspire other producers here at PCAM. So I'll start with just introducing you guys and what you've done, and then we'll get into the questions. All right, awesome. So Cindy Burstead is an independent filmmaker, educator, and freelance producer. Her films tell stories about real-life experiences with the goal of connecting viewers more deeply to our shared humanity. Formerly a community organizer, she is committed to making and using social issue films to engage audiences in dialogue and community building, and many other things. There's a lot of things. Continue to astound me. And then Nick. So Nick Cassaway is a visual artist, educator, radio programmer, and collector of obscure records. Nick has been showing his work locally and nationally and has his work in the collection of the Pennsylvania Convention Center and the Philadelphia Museum of Art. He is an assistant professor in design and merchandising program at Drexel University and began his radio project broadcast DJ Yard Sale Presents in March 2018. And you're now approaching your 100th episode.
It's coming up.
That's
420.
Awesome. Congrats.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
I know how much work that goes into it. So I want to start with a few things, primarily just so that people have an idea of like who you all are. If you could just kind of tell us about some of the projects you've worked on or something that you're really, proud of, and like, what is it? What's the deal?
Yeah. Want me to start?
Yeah, you
sure.
start.
Okay. So as you said, I'm a visual artist and a teacher and a radio producer. The visual art I've been doing for 25, 30 years. I used to run a gallery in Philadelphia.
Wow.
We did a lot of experimental projects. One of the reasons I do radio is because we did a pirate radio broadcast out of our gallery for 2 months,
cool.
which was pretty wild. That's why I think the first time I actually broadcast DJ Yard Sale was over that Nexus radio. But so that I haven't. But I show my work. So I have all sorts of exhibitions that I've done. I exhibited at Eastern State Penitentiary years and years ago, about 2004. And then recently I had a show at this organization called the Center for Immersion Visual Artists, and I did this big wallpaper installation. So a lot of what I do, I just try to experiment with the medium and kind of push the boundaries and try to learn as much as I can. Now a lot of my focus, although I'm still making artwork, a lot of my focus is the radio show. I mean, because it happens weekly.
And what is your radio show about?
So DJ Yard Sale Presents, I call it, there's a bunch of different ways that I talk about it. One is I call it Radio Smorgasbord, because it's just kind of a whole bunch of different things that you can sample from. I also say that it's 90 years of recorded music, but none of the hits. No, I take that back. I play a lot of hits, but not current hits on that. It's thematic based, so most nights that I'm on, there'll be a theme, there'll be a topic that we try to, kind of curate music around. Mm-hmm. We just did a whole show of Latin music from the 30s and 40s and 50s, so I have like these like little sub shows like Latin Fiesta. Now I have a country music jamboree.
It is a smorgasbord.
It really is.
Sure.
And it's music that I love, and since I've been doing the show, as Cindy can attest, my record collection has probably doubled. Because every week, what I really like about doing the show is I get to, play music that I like, but I also get to learn about music. So I'm, I really like this musician. Let's, pick up a record by this person and then learn about that. And then of course I had to buy more records by those artists. So that happens weekly. So that's like this great creative focus, whether I like it or not. It has to happen once a week. At the same time, I'm trying to, make some artwork for an exhibition I have in December, and I have a full-time teaching gig at Drexel. So that's
awesome.
Very
busy.
Mm-hmm.
As many of us PCAM producers are. Awesome. What about you, Cindy?
Let's see. I'm a documentary filmmaker, but I feel like I'm trying to figure out like what it means to be a documentary filmmaker in this day and age.
Yeah.
Because it, you know, previously was like doing long form work, and now I'm more interested in short form, and I'm also just trying to figure out like what their opportunities are for distributing work.
Yeah.
Because I feel like the playing field is just like, it's like more wide open than it used to be. A lot more like DIY kind of approaches to filmmaking and distribution. More so than it, like when I first started making documentaries, it was like long form and you gotta tell important stories, and it's like the truth about everything, and it's long, and you got to watch it, and I don't know. I'm actually in this space where I feel like I'm like reinventing my own identity as a filmmaker, because most of the work I've done recently has actually been more freelance documentary projects for nonprofits, and it's all been short form. Yeah.
It's probably because of the shorter attention spans that we all have now.
Yeah, but it's also, I think, too, like, I don't know, I've been thinking a lot about, this whole zeitgeist we're in about who gets to speak for whom and what stories you're telling, and so I'm thinking a lot about that. And
that's good. That's good to think about that and have that at the forefront. We have plenty of people who tell stories that they probably shouldn't. Would you say with this kind of new age, like DIY, self-distribution and promotion, do you feel like that makes that easier for filmmakers, or is it like a new obstacle that they're facing?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's like trying to figure out, how are you contributing and not just making more noise, And what is it that is going to, stand out about the work? I don't know. It's hard. I think that's the other reason I'm thinking more carefully about what it is that I'm doing, because I feel like there's so much video content that's available now.
Yeah.
And so it's I think it's both an opportunity and a challenge. It's more like, I'm kind of feeling lately like there's no reason to not make work, because you can do a lot of stuff on your phone.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You can, but, I'm still trying to, honor the integrity of good storytelling. Trying to figure out like what my signature style is, and not just sort of fall into standard formats of like what typical documentary storytelling has looked like, even though we have to follow formulas to have people understand the work. But I don't know, I'm just...
But do you?
Right, so that's what I'm trying to, I don't know, I'm in a space where I'm trying to like reinvent myself a little bit.
Well, that's exciting too, because it's like, what's coming next? I don't know.
Yeah.
Also terrifying, but exciting.
I don't know.
I did want to pick your brain about New Day Films, and one, like, what is New Day Films, and how, if a member is a filmmaker, like they get involved, or what benefits they can find from that, and what other distribution opportunities there might be.
So New Day Films is it's a filmmaker, it's a cooperative. So it's a distribution company that's owned and operated by the filmmakers who are its members. And there's over 100 filmmakers in the cooperative. It's actually the oldest, I believe it is the oldest filmmaker-owned and operated cooperative, like in the country.
Wow.
I would say in the country.
That's
I don't want to say the world because I don't know, but pretty certain.
That's still pretty impressive.
I have to say American Factory, that just won the Oscar.
Oh,
for
yes.
Best Documentary, which was the filmmakers Julia Reichert and Steve Bognar. So Julia Reichert is a founding member of New Day Films.
Oh, wow,
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yes. And so, like, in the spirit of what American Factory is. So Julia started New Day Films with other filmmakers, and it was a feminist collective. And so its origins are in the feminist movement, and filmmakers banding together to find a way to distribute films about feminism that were hard to market, right? And so this very small group of filmmakers, women filmmakers, got together and decided to do self-distribution. And I don't know the exact number. I think it was less than 10. And now the whole spirit of just like activist filmmaking is the spirit of New Day. And people who are interested in documentary and using their films for activism and social change and awareness come to New Day. And the market for distribution in New Day is the educational market. So it's colleges, universities, community organizations, NGOs, because it's all about trying to activate people through film. So the hard part about New Day is because it's a cooperative, you market the films yourself. So it's self-distribution, but in collaboration, with other filmmakers. In the sense that, like, you can do group marketing, you can buy email lists together, you can gain knowledge, you have a community that you're connected to, kind of keep you going when you're sort of like, I don't want to market my film today, or but I guess the idea was also that when you're thinking about when you're making a film, not just making the film, but who's going to watch the film and how is it going to be used, and you're thinking about the audience for the film at a very early stage of your filmmaking. So you don't want to just finish the film and then not have a place to show it, or maybe it's in the festival circuit, but that's a very particular audience. So, like, to be able to activate people with film, you want to have this broader network. So that's the other reason to come to New Day, because it's like you're already motivated to try to get your film out there. And if you just also turn it over to a distributor, any old distributor, you don't know how much work a distributor is going to do to help prioritize getting your film out there. And you end up doing a lot of work anyway. So the whole idea of New Day is that, so you're involved in the distribution of your film. And then there's also an economic benefit to it, because you're not, you are getting a higher percentage of the income from the film. Although, yes, with the DVDs phasing out, this is all becoming a much harder market to, like, make money in. And it's not the reason you do it, but it actually was a nice benefit. Because the educational market, you can sell films, but you can sell DVDs for a higher price. But now with streaming, this is like a whole new world. It's kind of like we are now dealing in New Day with the situation that, musicians were dealing with when, streaming MP3s became popular. And, how do you make money when you're putting something out there on iTunes for 99 cents, right? So in any case, New Day is just a way to kind of be in community with other filmmakers who are creating social issue content and using it to connect with audiences and, activate audiences in connection with the subject matter. So it's a pretty vibrant community, and it's competitive to get into the co-op, but there's a process, but once you're in, then you can bring more films into the co-op if you so choose. So it's a really nice way to network and be in community with other filmmakers, in addition to learning how to,
getting that support.
Get people involved in your work, seeing your work.
And I definitely have more questions, but I wanted to pop over to Nick to talk about, like, you have all these things that you're juggling, right? Like, you're always doing something. And I know one thing that stands out to me is your promotion for DJ Yard Sale Presents. Like, I see it all the time, and I recognize it. Like, even before someone was like, that's Nick, and I was like, oh my God, I know his DJ before I knew him. But I wanted to, like, kind of pick your brain on how, like, what the process is that you go through for promoting either your show, your radio show, or any of the other mediums that you're working with to kind of connect to that audience.
Sure.
That you have?
I guess a lot of this kind of grew out of when I ran the gallery. You know, it's like how much, you know, it was a nonprofit organization, so it's like how much can we do for free? And it was like every channel that we could possibly, and this was like in the late 90s, so it was kind of right at the beginning of the internet, everything, but we would just find that any news outlet that had some website that you could just send stuff to, you know, or just type up a press release and just send it to everything. I think even before I worked in the gallery, I had this like guerrilla curating group with a friend of mine, and we would have these ridiculous events that we would do, and we would send press releases to Channel 6, to Don Pollock's World. You know, he would always carry like the goofy stories, and he would come out. And so
awesome.
Don Pollock covered like 2 of our weird shows. So that was something where it was like, I kind of recognized that there's so many free channels for putting stuff out there. You know, so when I ran the gallery, we would just kind of distribute it to whatever news source was out there, and it would just get listed, and people would know about it. And so I just took advantage of the same idea, you know, with my own exhibitions, and then also with the radio show. I mean, for the radio show, but now it's all Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not on Twitter. I can't even go there, but but it's just like I know if I just put it out there, so I don't know, someone's going to see it, someone's going to hear about it. I paid once like $1 or $2 for an ad just to kind of see what would happen, and people from all over the country had liked my graphic. I don't know if it didn't mean anything. I mean, I'm not doing my radio show for money. I just want people to hear stuff.
Yeah.
So it's really, you know, it's interesting. As I'm doing this show, so I make this graphic and I send that out, and I usually have some kind of announcement. I might have guests. I'll tag them. I just figure if you can just kind of create this little organic network, then you know, people will like it. I also found that if I put my face, you know, because I take a picture of myself with a record that I'm going to play for my show. So if I have a picture of my face, people tend to like it. You know, more so than if I just put a graphic out there. It's just
You're
some
a
weird.
person, and
Right, exactly.
like
It's
that
some weird thing, and so I do that. When I'm doing the radio show, I'll keep my stories going, and so I'll get people to chime in. And for a while, it's the weirdest thing. I must have gotten onto Instagram's you go on the stories page. I must have been on that somehow because I would just get random people liking my story.
Wow.
There was a dentist from Doylestown that every week would like my. It was really funny. So just kind of just putting it out there, and I mean I don't know how many people listen. I mean I can talk to our station manager and try to get those those stats. You know, I know people check in. I also put the stuff out on Mixcloud, which is a free service that you can upload your radio mixes to. It's out of the UK, so the licensing is a little bit more liberal in terms of music.
Yeah.
So I can put it out there, and then people, I have 30 followers or whatever. I mean, I'm sure I could build that network. I mean, I'm sure I could build that network if I paid for it, but I'm cheap, so I don't. But I can see, I can see how many shows have been listened, how many minutes have been listened. I think I'm almost up to like 10,000 minutes. So,
Whoa.
So it's like,
that's really cool.
It's not too bad.
Yeah, and one of the similar things that I heard from both of you is this idea of knowing your audience. Because it's like you need to know where your audience is to communicate with them. So what are ways that you kind of figured out? Like one is like you sought out that 6 ABC person, but like ways that you kind of figure out for people who might be starting out, like who is my audience? How do I figure that out?
I mean, it's like for my radio show, it's like I think it's always like initially like mom and dad and your friends are your audience. But the goal is always to go beyond that. I always say I'm famous amongst my friends because people know what I do. So that's hey, I'm your famous friend that just your other friends are aware of. But yeah, I feel like now, I mean, I'm almost at 100 shows. So I feel like now my show's really not targeted to anyone in particular, but certainly when I do like a country music show, I'm getting certain listeners for that, trying to build up like this whole Latin fiesta show, trying to get, different audience for that. But, and then sometimes I have people call in, so
Who's your number one fan?
Right, what that?
Who's your number one fan?
I don't know. It's funny. My show the other night, I had my friend David was on, who sits in with me every once in a while, and then my friend Maria had just came back from Colombia, and she's like, "Oh, I have some 45s that I want to give to you. I'm going to come by the show." And so we're playing, we're hanging out and we're talking, and I'm like, "Oh, my two audience members are here." These are the people that I know will listen to my show every week.
Yeah, and now they're here. They made it to the big
In the
time.
studio. Who's listening?
Well, maybe they're two
Yeah,
friends.
right, exactly.
Cindy, how do you, for the work that you've created, how do you figure out for yourself who your audience is before that?
Well, it depends on the subject matter of the story. So it's funny. I was just like, oh my God, the film I have in New Day is now like 10 years old. I was like, well, how did that happen? But it's still in distribution. And so that's a film that's about crime victims and men in prison coming together to create art, a mural about healing after crime has happened. So then you think about, okay, well, who's interested in that story? People in prison, crime victims, educators who teach criminal justice, judges. I mean, it's just like it runs the gamut. You start to think about who does this topic appeal to. And because in New Day especially, because there's a big educational market, then you just start thinking about like the different disciplines within academia, that you can reach, and you giving educators resources to use and talk about the film. But I'm also finished this project last year. It was a freelance project for the Philly Photo Art Center called the Women's Mobile Museum, and we did 11 artists' profiles of the women who were participating in the project. And so I worked on it with a friend of mine, Anula Shetty, who's another producer. And so we're doing a sound mix, and we are kind of packaging it for distribution. But we're thinking about, of course, it followed women through a multimedia residency. And it was all about kind of leveling the playing field, breaking down like cultural hierarchies in the art world. So we're kind of thinking about audiences, like who does this appeal to? Well, women in the arts, women in social change. I haven't gotten beyond that. I'm starting to think about the audience for it, because I'm actually thinking, wow, wouldn't it be really cool? Because let's see, all combined, it's a compilation. Maybe it's like 30 minutes max. But maybe try to get out there on YouTube and find a producing partner that has a YouTube channel that would be interested in this content. So, so topically or thematically, it's kind of combing the YouTube world and who's out there already, putting content out that has to do probably with, women, art, and social change.
Yeah. Which are pretty broad in themselves.
Yeah, activism. So I'm actually thinking about audience, but I'm actually thinking about the distribution through YouTube, which would be a different network for me.
Gotcha. Yeah. I have a question for both of you, and it's one I always ask: is what advice would you give to like newer producers who are creating content on like what they should be thinking about or considering, or even some like handy tips for like promoting or distributing their work? So, like anything.
And so this is something that comes out of my teaching and also my experience running a gallery where it was a cooperative, and I found it really important for the artists and for my students to be able to talk about themselves and not feel bad, and not feel like,
yeah.
oh, I shouldn't be talking about me, because for artists, it's like you're going to an exhibition because you think something is interesting.
Yeah.
We started a video series. I mean, this was years ago. But I wanted all the artists that showed to be able to speak for 3-4 minutes about their work. And some people were petrified.
Yeah.
And they were awesome because they were so interesting, like what they did. And I do that with my students. They have to speak, and public speaking, I think, is one of the most important things to do, and just be able to put that information out there. Occasionally on the radio show, I'll have artists on, visual artists, as I always say, the radio is such a visual medium. But to have artists on to talk about their work is great. It's so interesting just to hear that, to hear people describe their process or what their work looks like or the materials that they're using. I think is really important. So just like, you're making this thing, whatever this thing is, whether it's visual or audio or, in some other kind of format, talk about it. Think about kind of why it's interesting and why someone else would think that's interesting. Kind of think about it from the audience's point of view.
Yeah, it's right. I also, because I teach too, is that's what I'm always telling my students, is that they are just as much part of this production as the rest of it, right? Because they're the ones who are telling the story. Right. And that it showed in the fact that people really love the pictures with your face on it more than just the graphic, right? Like you're seeing the direct results
It actually
of that.
took me a long time to feel comfortable doing that. Kind of try to follow my own advice. I was like, I'm not like a big selfie person, but I was like, I should put myself there and say like, I'm playing this tonight, and then if I guess, then they can be on there too.
That's so cool. Yeah. Awesome.
What about make stuff? You just got to make stuff, right? That's the first thing you have to do to be able to put it out there. So I think like advice would be don't think that there's only one way to do something. There's because so there isn't only one way to do something, but whatever you do, you want to be organized about your approach to it. Like I have a very unorganized YouTube channel simply because I can have a YouTube channel with my Gmail account. Yeah. And I look at it and I'm like, oh my God, there's that and that. Like, what is this identity? So I've actually been thinking a lot about trying to create like more of a unified identity. So I have to sort of get my YouTube channel as it is into shape, but it's so people can follow it. And there's some kind of logic to what it is they're looking. It's like you're curating yourself, Yeah. So I would say just, there's outlets, there's Vimeo, there's YouTube, there's PCAM. Just try to think about an approach to, curating your own content. And also, like, there's ways to, like, there's this Film Freeway, which is like a portal for festivals. And there's also like a lot of different festivals now you can enter for free. Just kind of poke around and find some fun opportunities.
So just get out there and be yourself.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So thank you both for joining me.
Oh, absolutely.
So for our viewers, this is Nick Cassaway and Cindy Burstein. Your thoughts have been awesome, and I hope they're super helpful for everyone who's listening and watching. When is your show on?
Monday nights, 9 to 11 p.m. Okay. And you can also find me on Mixcloud at djyardsale.com.
Awesome.
So you can follow me on Facebook or Instagram, and then coming soon, there is going to be a YouTube channel of something good.
With a great brand identity.
Well, thank you both so much for joining me for Producer Circle, and I hope everyone learned a little bit about something, whether that's distribution, finding yourself in your brands, and how to promote your show. So tune in next time, and we'll have some new producers here.
Yeah, all right, thanks.
All right, thanks.
This is fun, thank you.